Mic check, mic check. Today is February 15th, Black History Month. And we're the Illinois Legislative Black Caucus. We're going to start our press conference response. Y'all ready?
Yeah, let's go.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this post-budget address press conference. I'm Representative Carol Ammons of the 103rd District, which is Urbana-Champaign. I'm also the joint chair of the Illinois Legislative Black Caucus. We are honored that you've come this afternoon to hear from us. There are few things that draw our collective angst in history. And in recent years, nothing brings distress to our collective experience more than the onslaught of COVID-19. The pain and anguish that we all share will remain with us for generations to come. That year also seared another historic marker into our collective minds, May 25th, 2020. It was a day that we will never forget and will live in infamy in our collective human memory. The murder of George Floyd, like so many others, was a kind of disorienting dilemma. It's something that occurs that shakes you out of where you are and puts you into another place. It's these moments that allow people to move from their current mindset to a new one. It helps the person change their opinions. Up until these two moments, that righteous call for justice for African Americans went largely ignored or simply tweaked with little demonstrable change in our life indicators. Noble ideas is the language we've become accustomed to. However, through the vision and leadership of Majority Leader Kimberly Lightford, who understood the moment and heard the call for the long-term sustainable response that changes public policy, it positioned us to address systemic racism. The members of our caucus who understood that we had to dial into the underlying decisions that create systemic racism and structural exclusion of African Americans in the state of Illinois went to work. Fast forward to 2023. Today's budget address represents the distance that Black communities in this state must still travel. As part of our efforts to amplify the voices of our constituents, our leaders are even more determined to continue to challenge the practices that exclude Black businesses and vendors, Black employment attainment, poor health outcomes, and eliminate inequities and their underlying causes. Today, you will hear from several of our champions in our caucus who are fighting every day to make the lives of our community members measurably better. Please help me to welcome to this podium Senate Chairman, Senator Robert Peters.
There he is.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Let me first say that this is a start. A good start. And I feel immensely confident in leaders like Chairman L.G. Sims and Chairwoman Jahan Gordon Booth that we can build on this budget. Let me also say, as someone who was born deaf, who struggled with the speech impediment, who spent so much of their childhood being told that they would amount to very little from a variety of adults and stakeholders, that the investment in early childhood is a public safety policy and necessity in this state. I also want to say is when we have conversations about what it means to have a safe state, that we need to reimagine that conversation. We're seeing that investment, a continued investment in the Reimagined Public Safety Act, but also investments in housing in home Illinois. I have a unique district, one in which we have some of the richest homes, and we also have the highest rate of evictions and homelessness in the state. The Home Illinois plan is a jumping point for equality and equity. It builds off the civil rights legacy of the Black Caucus pillars. And I am honored and proud to be part of a General Assembly that's going to move forward and make us a leading state when it comes to the houseless and the homeless who need our help. Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. I think to me that when I look at my story and who I am and I think about the communities I talk to, I think about people who are tired of 30 to 40 years of failure. We've been practicing the same policies over and over again, and we've been seeing failure over and over again. I'm being told I got 3 minutes. I'm talking. Thank you. It's good. We've been seeing this over and over again, and it has failed. We have seen governors who decide to think about themselves and not others. We have seen legislators who think about themselves and not others. But it is this caucus, this General Assembly, this governor who is thinking about everyone in Illinois. That we have a clarity that when you lift up black families, you lift up every family in Illinois. That for too long, we have been taking the easy route to investing in people. We have been thinking about dollars in the pockets of the few who are wealthy and not the working class families that need it most. What makes not only this budget the budgets that we've seen in the past is something unique these last 4 years. An investment in working class Illinoisans, particularly black working class Illinoisans. And I want to point out that this effort, this push, this lead comes from the Black Caucus. When you think about our pillars, they're not just something that just stand out on their own, but live in the legacy of civil rights accomplishment. When we think about the attacks, they don't just stand on their own, we've seen it in history. We saw this after the civil rights movement, where we saw a blowback, a reaction against history. I'm proud to stand here as Senate Black Caucus Chair and stand with my fine colleagues today because we are in a new era of civil rights leadership. And even though we are going to face reaction and blowback, we will stand strong. This week, we talk about Abraham Lincoln, and we talk about House divided. And I want to point out that was not a speech about unity, but a speech about choice. That we have choices to make, whether we were going to be a free state or a slave state, a free country or a slave country. That we must make difficult choices. We're in a House divided moment about who are we going to be as a country. Are we going to lift up people and build up the legacy of the past that we saw in 2020? Or are we going to turn to Ron DeSantis' filled with hate and attacks? In Illinois, unlike in Florida, we're going to lead. And it is these people who are leading it today. So I'm honored to stand here. I'm honored to be chair of the Senate Black Caucus. And I'm going to turn it over to my sister in this movement, Chairwoman Lakeisha Collins.
I'm gonna stick to the timer. So good afternoon, I am State Representative Lakeisha Collins of the 9th House District. I represent the North Lawndale community, parts of the West Loop and the near North Side. I am a mother of 3 black boys, and I'm also a former healthcare worker, and I'm a former organizer. And I'm also someone who has the everyday lived experience of a black Chicagoan who just wants to live instead of struggling to survive in a society that has continued to put barriers in the way of our progress. But that's no more, because today is a new day. And as the chair of the most powerful caucus in the state of Illinois, we will be exposing the inequity within the inequities that exist. We will no longer look for allies. We are looking for co-conspirators who are intentional about the long-term investments back into the black communities. Where we have continued to see the disparities in unjust housing, the school-to-prison pipeline, and even environmental injustice, the food deserts, the economic developments, and the racial wealth gap. In our black communities, we have hardworking families who are simply just trying to keep their heads above water, but continue to carry the burden of a system that by design, systemically, keeps us from achieving what we all call the American dream. Throughout decades, we as the black community have picked up the mantle to lead the charge for equality, and we had no problems in doing that to ensure that all of us have the access and representation across the board to the quality of life and the pursuits of happiness. But there's a very big gap. I'll say that again. There's a very big gap when it comes to the black community. From chattel slavery to Jim Crow to the modern day Jim Crow, we continue to see those disparities. So I agree, yes, we see some improvements in this budget because of the work that the Black Caucus have done. But what we have seen where Black folks have been most successful, when given the opportunity in communities like Tulsa, Rosewood, Atlanta, and other American cities, it is going to take billions of dollars of long-term investments back into our communities for them to truly thrive. And throughout those decades of leading that charge and ensuring that all of us have the tools that we need for our communities to be thriving communities, where we have not seen those same gains distribute equally, we now are asking that you give us that same energy in return as we seek true equity and inclusion across the board. So I say unto Black Illinois, whether you be in Chicago, Rockford, Waukegan, Peoria, the south side or the west side of Chicago, Kankakee or Pembroke, or all the way down to Cairo, we hear you, we see you, because each and every one of you are our why. While we get up every day, while we come into this building, while we take all the hits and licks and slap that our ancestors took to be here, we take it all in. We want to thank the governor for his commitment and work in moving Illinois forward. But we want to see key investments and more improvements that are intentionally going back into the Black communities, whether it be for jobs, whether it be for equal pay, whether it be for real, true housing, whether it be for mental health services. You name it, we want it, because we deserve that access too. So I won't keep you any longer. But I will say in closing, it is hard being Black in America. It is hard. We live in this skin every single day. But we have always carried these burdens on our shoulders, the weight of the world, and told to smile and act like it doesn't even exist. But we no longer can go back to our communities with crumbs and we not fighting over one pack because we can make multiple pies. All we want is to be treated equally. We want to be treated equally, and we want to be able to look our constituents in their face and say, this is what we have been fighting for, this is what our ancestors have been dreaming of, and this is what we have produced, because this is what we come here for every single day, is to represent you. And so I'll give it back to our joint chair. Thank you all for taking time to listen, but it's a new day here in Springfield for our House Black Caucus. Thank you.
Thank you to the House and Senate Chairman and Chairwoman. With that, we're going to touch on a few specific areas of legislative matters. I would like to bring to the podium Senator Willie Preston from the 16th District and Representative Sonia Harper from the 6th District, who will talk about the economic and small business access.
Thank you. I'm State Senator Willie Preston. I represent the 16th District, which is the south side of Chicago, neighborhoods like Inglewood, Auburn, Gresham, as well as the western suburbs, communities like Palos Hills and Oaklawn and Burbank. Budgets are moral documents. What I just heard from the governor gives me the belief that my colleagues in the Illinois Black Caucus and I have an ally in the fight for Black economic prosperity in the governor's mansion. Historically, Illinois has been a beacon of hope for Black Americans because it has been a place where people like my grandparents could come after fleeing southern states. People like my grandparents weren't just fleeing Mississippi and Tennessee and Alabama because of the racial violence. They came to our great state because of the economic opportunities that existed. Today, our job, all of our jobs, is to do everything we possibly can in order to ensure that the next generation of Black Americans has the economic opportunities to build a better life for themselves, their families, and our communities. The economic opportunity starts with three simple things: access, equity, and opportunity. Illinois must continue to invest in rebuilding our infrastructure, and that means investing in our human infrastructure, as well as our roads and bridges. Illinois must invest in black people and ensure that we have access to the best schools, the best apprenticeship programs, economic opportunities, and a safe community where we can live, we can play, and we can do all of this without the fear of violence. I believe that the economic opportunity and public safety are inherently linked. By achieving financial prosperity for all, namely black people, we can achieve public safety for all people. And the hard work to reach that goal starts with a budget like the one I just heard the governor propose, which is a reflection of our values again as a state. Our values must include making Illinois the leader in business done by black business owners in America, small business owners, women entrepreneurs, building trade apprenticeships, and the resurgence of the black working class. We will lead to the return of a black Wall Street in every corridor in the state of Illinois where black people reside. For too long, we have been systematically redlined out of financial opportunities. And I want to take this moment to thank my Black Caucus members who were here before I got here for all of the work that you all have done. The next level is our focus on our check. So I want to say I'm encouraged, Governor Pritzker, by this budget address. While we keenly are aware of the challenges that we will face, only through unity will we have the strength to approach the challenges head on that we're about to face. I'm eagerly looking forward to uniting with my Black Caucus colleagues here and the Pritzker administration to ensure that all Illinois is at the forefront of black excellence. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is State Representative Sonia Harper from the 6th District. Now, the governor says we are winning and that the state of our state is stronger than it's been in decades. And while we've definitely made some gains to be proud of, there's still so much more work to be done for the uplifting of our black communities across the state. People still don't have access to jobs, quality affordable housing, and fresh food in many parts of the state. We still see too much violence and the resources needed to combat its root causes not going to the right entities. Sadly, all of these problems disproportionately affect communities like ours. But if we can create an equitable budget year after year and make sure it is fully implemented year after year, we can actually improve the quality of life for so many that desperately need it. Now, last budget cycle, the Black Caucus worked for the allocation of more than $2.5 billion in funding, the largest amount in history, to our most disproportionately impacted areas of the state through various programs and services, but we are still waiting for many of those investments to be made on the ground in communities. We need a budget that speaks up for small businesses and grows entrepreneurship in our most vulnerable communities. We need a budget that ensures equity in our food system, in the agriculture industry, and in the cannabis industry. I want to thank Governor Pritzker for the investment into the Illinois Grocery Initiative, which will ensure that more local food retailers are selling food grown by local farmers, hopefully reducing the number of food deserts that we have here in the state. We need a budget that gives our black businesses a fair chance at getting state contracts so that they can grow and become a source of jobs in their own communities. We need a budget that reflects education and job training programs that help to grow our workforce. And more importantly, we need policies that protect consumers, eliminate wage disparities, and uplifts our families, our single parents, and people with records. And just as importantly, we need to ensure that capital and infrastructure developments and investments are distributed equitably throughout our state. In closing, I just want to say, where I live, we all have to work double time in order to catch up with the rest of the society. We have to work 2 and 3 times as hard in order to make it to the same place in life as others. And this is by no fault of our own, but because of the unjust laws and policies and practices, i.e. systemic racism, put into place before many of us were born. And now here we are as lawmakers with all power and authority to change some of those very laws and practices. It's our job, folks, to stand up and play our role in providing economic equity for Black families across the state. And if we really mean that, then we will see it reflected not only in this budget, but in all of our state budgets for years to come. Thank you and have a great day.
Thank you, Representative Harper. Excellent point. A vehicle is no good if it's just a vehicle with no engine. So the budget is our vehicle, but if it doesn't move the money to our communities, it is no good. With that, I'd love to bring up to the podium for you all on the issue of public safety, our chairman, Justin Slaughter, and our majority leader, L.G. Sams.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Madam Chair. State Representative Justin Slaughter, representing the far south side of Chicago and southwest Cook County suburbs. House Chair of the Judiciary Criminal Committee. Listen, make no mistake about it. We are marching forward. We're marching forward with justice. We're marching forward with equity. We're marching forward with fairness. Let us also take this opportunity to tell you what we are not doing. We will not, I repeat, we will not be satisfied with just passing bills. Let me be clear here. We will not be complacent and just be satisfied with passing bills. We now aggressively turn our attention to our second battle in this war, which is implementation. We all know that bills, laws are simply just words on a piece of paper. We now want to bring these words to life and actually implement transformative changes to our criminal justice system. And yes, we have been able to pass some landmark legislation with the Safety Act and other public safety initiatives that our family has been able to pass. Sentencing reform, prison reform, court reform, also police reform. In regards to revamping our violence prevention efforts, we've done things like the Reimagined Public Safety Act, but we must have the prioritized investments, and equally important, the buy-in from our justice and law enforcement entities. And what we're saying is let's start in-house with our state agencies. We're calling on the Illinois State Police, Illinois Department of Corrections, Illinois Department of Juvenile Justice, the Prisoners Review Board, the Illinois Law Enforcement Training and Standards Board. As it relates to root causes, we're calling on our social service agencies to come to the table, DHS, HFS, DCFS, to prioritize these efforts. As it relates to a lot of these contemporary industries that you're hearing about, and what are they? CEJA in clean energy. I think we heard that we're a top-ranked workforce development state in the country. That's great, but we need to realize that in the Black community. What else are we hearing? Electric vehicles, our cannabis industry, our gaming industry. We must ensure that these contemporary industries prioritize community revitalization in our Black districts and help us address our criminal justice challenges and increase community safety. I'm done. You heard from me too much probably these last couple years, but shame on you if you thought that we were going to be satisfied with just passing bills. Shame on you. We have gotten and gone too far to turn back. We will continue to pick up the Black Caucus banner, move forward, and march forward with these reforms. Thank you so much, Senator Sims, Chairman Sims.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon. I'm LG Sims, State Senator, 17th District. Did I break the microphone? There we go. State Senator, 17th District, Chairman of the Senate Appropriations Committee. You know, what you have just heard from members of the Illinois Legislative Black Caucus is a focus on the future. We have for far too long been mired in the past. We've talked about over the last several years, several different and distinct pandemics. The pandemic of COVID-19, an economic crisis unlike anything we had seen in a generation, and the pandemic of 1619. So the focus that you see from us today and the focus that you hear from us today is about addressing and dealing with the pandemic of 1619 and addressing systemic racism and stripping it from the very core of Illinois state government. We cannot and no longer work to or gloss over the challenges that face our communities. It's not enough for us to talk about doing one thing and one thing being the only thing that we do. We have to have investments in education. We have to have investments in health care. We have to have investments in economic development. The budget that you just saw from Governor Pritzker addresses many of these issues. You know, we oftentimes, you hear that old stale term of law and order. And oftentimes when it means law and order, it means law and disorder for our communities. It does not focus on moving communities forward. It doesn't address those root causes of crime. It doesn't address the mental health crisis that's going on with our young people, the lack of education that's going on in our young people, the lack of stable housing that's going on for our young people. But what you hear from us is a commitment to addressing those issues, making sure that we address and focus on fighting for the least of these, giving individuals the opportunity to lift themselves up. You hear in the criminal justice system all the time about people getting a second chance. Well, many of the folks in our communities never had a first one. So what you are seeing from us is a commitment to addressing those root causes of violence, preventing crime from happening in the first place, making sure that our young people have the same educational opportunities as anyone else, regardless of zip code or what they look like. So what you are hearing from the Illinois Legislative Black Caucus is a commitment to our communities, a commitment to ensuring that our communities have equity. Now, equity means that we have the same as everyone else, but also that we repair some of the damage that has been done in the past. So I look forward to working with Governor Pritzker and his administration. I look forward to working with my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to address the root causes of our communities and the root cause of the needs that are plaguing our communities so that we can all have a better, brighter future. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Slaughter and Majority Leader Sims. Next, we have an education focus from Chairman Will Davis.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Will Davis, State Representative of the 30th District in the South Suburbs, but I'm also the chairperson for the Appropriations Committee for K-12 Education in the House. If you heard what my colleagues said prior to me coming up here, the one thing that you have to appreciate is that the linchpin that makes all of this happen is education. Education truly is the key. Everyone uses education as the platform for their campaigns, but we don't see the reflection of that when you finally win the office and come here to Springfield. 4 years ago, actually 5 years ago, we started on a path of trying to fully fund schools here in the state of Illinois. With the help of my colleague, Majority Leader Kim Lyford, and others, we passed a historic funding formula for schools here in the state of Illinois. And we started on a path of $350 million new dollars in education to be spread through school districts throughout the entire state of Illinois. And while we've been able to maintain that, but now we recognize that we are not going to get to where we're trying to go unless we up that investment. That investment needs to be higher. My colleague, Chairman Lilly, often talks about what are your priorities? And there are a lot of priorities, don't get me wrong. But I believe that education is the most important of those priorities, because if you are not educated, you can't access the job. If you aren't educated, you can't fully engage in all that the state of Illinois has to offer. So for us, that's where a tremendous focus has to be in that space. Now, my experts, those that I work with, says that in order to get to fully funding schools in the state of Illinois, that the investment does not need to be $350 million. It needs to be at least $550 million as at least a start to get to fully funding education in the state of Illinois. So even when the governor talks about the fact that fewer schools are less than adequate in terms of their funding, doesn't mean that they're fully funded. Doesn't mean that. It means that we have a long way to go to make sure that schools in the state of Illinois receive all the resources necessary so that they can provide the high quality education that we all talk about. That's what's necessary to make it happen. And unfortunately, when we talk about schools that are underfunded in the state of Illinois, they're represented in these districts behind me. These are black districts, black kids that need that investment. They need that investment. And as much as we talk about higher education, if we can't fix it here in K through 12, then what is higher education going to look like? It's going to be dismal in terms of representation of black students. So here today, we stand to call on the governor to say that, yes, we appreciate what you've said, but acknowledge that it's not enough. And as the appropriations chair, it's my job now to figure out how to get that $350 million up to $550 million. And with the help of these individuals behind me, that is our goal, that is our objective, to make sure that we are providing the education. We talk about Africa being the motherland, and I'm a little tangent here. That means we support everybody. The dollars that we put in K through 12 education are not necessarily just for black students. We support everybody in the state of Illinois with our education dollars. So when we fight for it, we actually fight for everybody. We don't get the support from everybody, but we fight for everybody. And we're going to continue to fight not only for our communities to make sure that we get what we need, but also in the entire state of Illinois. So right now, Governor, $350 is not enough. We need to get to $550, and we're going to count on you to help us to get there. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Davis. We have just a couple more speakers for today. We would do nothing if we have poor health care. You can't even access education if you have poor health care. And so with that, we're going to bring to the microphone Representative Lamont Robinson and Senator Mike Simmons.
Good afternoon. I'm State Senator Mike Simmons, representing the 7th District on the far north side of Chicago, and I serve as the chairman of the Senate Human Rights Committee. Dr. King once told us that of all the injustices that we see in this country, the most shocking and abhorrent are those that are in the healthcare system. And so I am so pleased to see that the budget proposal that we are seeing today does attempt to shore up access to healthcare. But as you know, as members of the General Assembly and as the Black Caucus, it is our job to advocate for our constituents. And so for me, the first thing that we have to do is talk about how we expand access to healthcare in a specific way and include those communities that are impacted in the resource allocation that we need to tackle our healthcare disparities. We know that later this year, there are going to be so many people who are going to get kicked off of Medicaid because the expiration of President Biden's emergency declaration for COVID. And many of those people that are going to be kicked off of Medicaid are black people in our constituents. So it is going to be really important for us to make sure that we hold the line and find those additional resources so that we can ensure that people continue to have access to the coverage that they need that will save lives. Because I represent a district in Chicago where right now the life expectancy gap for black people that look just like me and everybody behind me is in some instances 30 years less than it is for white people in the city of Chicago. And that is abhorrent, and we can no longer accept that as a status quo. When we think about the HIV/AIDS epidemic, this is a specific subset of what we talk about when we talk about those life expectancy disparities that we see in black communities. I represent a district that right now has the highest instance of new diagnoses of HIV and AIDS. And we know that black people, the data tell us that black people are those that are bearing the brunt of those new diagnoses. In fact, we know that in 2003, roughly 50% of those who had HIV/AIDS or were newly diagnosed were black people in this state. And you know, right now in 2023, we know that the needle has not moved. That 14% of people in Illinois are black Americans, yet we represent 50% still of those living with HIV and those that are newly diagnosed. We know that the Illinois Department of Public Health has released $103 million to community-based organizations that are out there helping educate and prevent new cases of HIV/AIDS. We also know that only $2 million of those dollars have gone to black-led organizations who have the direct lived experiences, who have the technical know-how, and who understand how to reach our communities that are most at risk for HIV/AIDS. So we have got to address that in this budget. And I look forward to working with my colleagues in the House and Senate. I look forward to working with the governor and everybody that we must work with to change that number so that we get more funds going to our black-led organizations so that we can actually start to move the needle on the HIV/AIDS epidemic and black communities and all the other health disparities that we've talked about that we know continue to plague black communities. So thank you so much, and now I'd like to bring up my colleague, Representative Lamont Robinson.
We're going to bring our chairwoman, Lily, to replace Lamont Robinson.
No one can replace Lamont Robinson, but I will say a few words on behalf of health. I'd like to start with, if you don't have your health, you don't have much else. I too want to thank Governor Pritzker for giving us a start on how we can bring health and wellness to all Illinoisans. Quality of life is what makes us move forward. And we do it better when we have dignity. And as Governor Pritzker indicated, he is addressing rate increases. He is addressing the shortage in the healthcare pipeline. He is making sure that our health workers are funded and supported. He is making sure that we have hotlines to make sure we can touch base with all the services that are available here in the state of Illinois. He's putting in place what I call family resource centers, where we can make sure that those resources are available, whether it's in the school, whether it's in the park district, but they're in our community. Health is the key to life. And as we work together, each and every one of us here as the Black Caucus, to make sure that every Illinoisan has access to health care, we're going to make a difference. What I really am excited about, we got a friend on the second floor to get us there. And as we stay focused, and when we go through the budget process, as we stay focused to making sure that every Illinois has quality life and dignity, we can do it together. With that, Lamont, I love you. We'll get more information from you on the other end. God bless you.
Thank you. Our last couple of speakers here before our Senate Majority Leader close us out will be Representative Mary Beth Canty and Senator Doris Turner on the issue of housing disparities.
Thank you so much. I am Mary Beth Canty of the 54th District, representing the northwest suburbs of Cook County. As a caucus, it is imperative that our budget provide equitable access to the tools that Illinoisans need to thrive, and I was glad to hear our governor say that housing was a key priority for him. Home ownership is one of those critical tools. To begin, it provides stable housing, which improves outcomes around employment, health, education, and safety. But most importantly, Homeownership is perhaps the most effective way for Black households to accumulate wealth over multiple generations. Wealth helps families weather emergencies and gives them the chance to move up the economic ladder. In essence, stable housing and homeownership are some of the best ways we can uplift the Black community and Illinois as a whole. Unfortunately, due to the legacy of discriminatory housing policies and lending practices, there is persistent inequality in homeownership attainment and housing equity across racial and ethnic lines. And Illinois is no exception. A recent report from the National Association of Realtors puts homeownership rate for Black Illinoisans at 39%, which trails the national rate of 41%. Illinois has a Black homeownership gap of 35.7%, which is the 20th highest among the 50 states. The racial homeownership gap is perhaps the most largest contributor to the racial wealth gap, which continues to prevent upward mobility for Black Illinoisans across the state. And the inequalities have only continued to widen as communities of color experience greater public health impacts and economic losses due to the COVID-19 pandemic. We have to ensure through this budget and every budget that residents have continued access to affordable and sustainable rental and homeownership opportunities. We have to end exclusionary zoning, which reinforces segregation and drives poverty in communities across Illinois. We have to dismantle restrictive land use and zoning laws that limit the expansion of our state's affordable housing supply and prevent Black Illinoisans from accessing safe neighborhoods, high-quality education, and health care. Finally, we have to update and keep existing homes and rental units safe for habitation so that residents, especially older adults and others on a fixed income, can age in their homes with the dignity and freedom that they deserve. We have to do more than just talk about the significant need for fair housing reforms. We have to take bold, decisive action to ensure the dream of American homeownership is attainable for communities of colors. As a state, we cannot allow homeownership to remain an empty promise for Black Illinoisans any longer. When we uplift Black and brown Illinoisans, the entire state benefits. As we negotiate our budgetary priorities in the upcoming weeks, stable housing and homeownership for the Black community deserves to be on the forefront of everybody's mind. As Governor Pritzker said, let's make our grandchildren proud. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Doris Turner. I'm the senator that represents the 48th district where we currently stand. Prior to coming to the Senate, I served for 10 years on the Springfield City Council. And when I left that chamber to come to this august body, I was asked, what did you leave lacking? And I say each and every time without hesitation, my main regret was leaving the Springfield City Council and not being able to have a permanent solution to the homelessness that that city faces. And Springfield is not unique. That situation faces everyone throughout the state of Illinois and throughout our country. Unfortunately, up until what I heard from Governor Pritzker, municipalities were left to try to figure out that burden on their own. And unfortunately, that led to a lot of discriminatory practices because it was left to the people who were sitting in those seats to develop the solution to the problem. Oftentimes, those were people who didn't even really think there was a problem and wanted to lay all of the burden on the individuals that were left in that situation. But what I heard today, and I was excited to hear from Governor Pritzker, is that he is changing the face of what homelessness looks like in our communities. And when we change what the face of homelessness looks like in our communities, then we change the nature of how we address that homelessness. So it's not just them, those people who are lazy and don't want to work. It's all of us who can find ourselves in that situation any day because of a situation that may have come upon us. So I was very excited to hear Governor Pritzker talk about Home Illinois. I feel like that is a reliable solution that not only, number one, as I said before, changes the face of homelessness in our communities, but it puts a solution that is not governed by who sits in those seats in those individual communities. It puts us in a place where we as a state are moving forward with a comprehensive way to address it. The need for affordable, accessible housing is dire for communities across Illinois, and especially for predominantly Black communities who have historically faced barriers to housing and home ownership, which you just heard my colleague talk about in great depth. Providing economic security for Illinois' families begins with ensuring access to safe, stable housing. And the key word there is stable. If you are sleeping on someone's couch, a different couch every week, you have housing, but that's not stable housing. At a time when people across the nation are facing unprecedented housing insecurity, I am extremely proud that my governor, Governor Pritzker, proposed a budget that talks about and creates Home Illinois. This program would help target the prevention of homelessness, expand housing support, and increase job opportunities for the homeless. If people have a job, then they can start to move themselves out of their dire situation. Expanding access to high-quality child care, preschool, and educational opportunities is critical. But children can only thrive in these programs when they have a roof over their head and their parents aren't forced to choose between paying the rent or sending their children to school. As lawmakers, we have a responsibility to take steps to ensure underserved communities have the resources they need, and this proposal, Home Illinois, is a great start to doing just that, supporting renters and investing in programs that provide a path to homeownership are critical steps toward making our communities more secure, equitable, and prosperous. Thank you.
Let me close us out like this. Say it loud. I'm Black and I'm proud. One more time, like you mean it. Say it loud. I'm Black and I'm proud. That is what you see. A dedicated group of Black leaders. We're proud of where we come from. We're proud of the shoulders we stand on, and we're proud of the work that we do in a racist society. So let me summarize what I've heard my colleagues say. Governor, we appreciate what you said today. In fact, it brought me to tears. For the first time in 25 years, that I've heard governor's budget address. I've never heard a governor acknowledge racism, acknowledge racism in a budget. Talk about poverty, talk about lying to us on who we are in the education system. He acknowledged so many things that I have become the angry Black woman for. He was able to say those things today. The governors prior to him, I started with Edgar, never acknowledged racism. Next governor, Brian, never acknowledged racism. Next governor, Blagojevich, never acknowledged racism. The next governor, Quinn, never acknowledged racism. The next governor, Rauner, never acknowledged racism. But yet you expect Black leaders to leave this institution and turn our communities around when we have been living and fighting and working in racist patterns and behaviors. We tired. We tired when we drive home and we hit potholes. But then we smooth sailing when we're in other communities that don't look like ours. We tired of being in communities that don't have fresh produce and our babies eat ramen noodles. We tired of not being educated properly. Free tuition is what we need. Finally, someone listened to us And it's not that the Black Caucus haven't been saying these same things generation after generation after generation. It was falling on racist ears. The same leaders who don't look like us fought against everything we've done, truth and nail, for the last 25 years that I can speak to. So I want to close like this. We're going to do our best. And we're going to continue to work hard. And we're going to continue to present pillars that the media didn't cover. We're going to continue to prevent ways to improve our lifestyle and how we live, and call on the governor to walk hand in hand in tandem with us. He doesn't seem to be afraid to acknowledge the truth. He doesn't seem to be afraid to put money in the right places that we've been asking for at least 2.5 generations that I can attest to. So I want all my colleagues standing behind me to know that we're the biggest, baddest, most intelligent caucus in this building. And we're going to let all of you continue to see that. But every single time there's a legislator pass an issue that's selfish, self-serving, and it gets all this big press. But when the Black Caucus pass initiatives to change the way we live, whenever we do that, it's a hush-hush. It's quiet. I'm calling on all of you to go tell it. Didn't Martin Luther King say, go tell it on the mountain? I need all y'all to go tell it. Go tell about the work that we're doing. Help us in this fight. Governor, we need you to continue. We need you to make sure your administration is implementing what we've put forth, and we need the resources to get it done. Thank you.
We say Ashe, Ashe, Ashe. Thank you all so much for joining us this afternoon for this press briefing. And if you have any questions, I'll stick around to answer them. But thank you to our members of the Illinois Legislative Black Caucus, House and Senate. Thank you.